Welcome to this week's episode of Optimal Metabolism, where we have a hot topic episode where we're going to talk about the difference between losing 5 pounds versus losing 50 pounds, what that looks like metabolically. And I do want to say right up front, these are my clinical experiences with working with clients for almost 25 years. This isn't some study that I looked at and I'm spewing out whatever it is that the conclusions or, whatever the study said. These are my clinical observances that I've seen with working with, at this point, thousands of people over the course of 25 years. We have two sponsors for today's episode. The first being Soursop Nutrition. I'm really excited that next week on the podcast, you will hear from Amy Lacey, and she is the founder of Soursop Nutrition. And you're going to hear her story and how she started to learn about Soursop and how it made a huge difference in her life, the anti-inflammatory benefits, the immunity benefits. And so I'm really excited to bring her on because you may listen to this podcast and hear the promotions for Soursop, but you don't know a whole lot about it. It's a fruit. It's hard to come by in the United States. It can be kind of expensive if you do find it in the United States. So Amy and her company have put together gummies and shakes to help you get more Soursop into your daily ritual, your daily routine. Super easy to do. So she'll be on next week, but that's one of our sponsors. The second being Prolon. Now, Prolon has longevity products, and I'm looking forward to using more of these products. I haven't been using them a lot over the summer. I'm sure a lot of, women with children, life gets pretty chaotic, even with two of mine being in college, they're home, and there's just always something going on at our house. Well, like there are maybe, I swear, like 2 days this summer where the house has been quiet. Nobody's here except me working. That I haven't been running somebody or somebody's been off for the day or what have you. I love it. But I haven't done a whole lot of prolonged longevity products. I have done their 5-day fasting mimicking diet, and I'm looking forward to using their 1-day prolonged fasting kits and just see how those work out. It mimics a 24-hour fast, but you're able to do the fast with some food. So check those out. Link in the show notes. All of my product recommendations are now in one place. For Soursop, you save 20% off of your order over $50. So that's a pretty big savings. And Prolon, you save 15% with my code. So that's all in the show notes. Check it out. Get yourself stocked up as we come into starting a new school year. So let's get to our hot topic, losing 5 pounds versus 50 pounds. So I just want to say right off, right from the start, there's not a whole lot that is different, whether you have a lot of weight to lose or whether you have a small amount of weight to lose. The major difference here is going to be how quickly the weight comes off, right? If you have a large amount of weight to lose, and I'm just using 50 as, a random number, but if you have a large amount of weight to lose, chances are that weight is going to come off more quickly than if you're down to those last 5 pounds. So let's talk about some things that you can do to try to be successful, no matter how much weight you have to lose. And so remember that weight is a symptom, right? It's usually an inflammatory response, a symptom of something, some kind of layer in the body. There's a reason why your body is not wanting to burn stored body fat. We've talked extensively about insulin resistance and how that stands in the way of burning its own body fat, because when insulin levels are high, your body basically cannot burn fat, right? Because insulin is a storage hormone. It's encouraging your body to store energy rather than burn it. So insulin resistance is definitely a culprit. You can listen back to so many episodes about insulin resistance. My Low Insulin Academy course will go through step by step how to reverse insulin resistance. And you can also get a testing kit if you think that you might have insulin resistance, but you're not sure. I do have metabolic testing kits available as well. But that Low Insulin Academy, which now has a pay what you can option, I would strongly encourage you to enroll and follow the steps that I lay out in there, lesson by lesson, to reverse your insulin resistance. But definitely the approaches are similar because weight loss is always multifactorial, right? That's what's so frustrating about it. It's like what works for one person may or may not work for the next person, because the base root cause of weight gain, obesity, metabolic disease, is different from person to person. So we have to look at many, many factors that play a role. And we always need to reassess where we are at. So if you've started a weight loss journey of 50 pounds, you're down 25 pounds and now you're feeling stuck and you're like, what the heck? What was working for me for 6 months is no longer working. I really want to lose these last 25 pounds, but I've just been sitting here for weeks. And I would say, it's several weeks, like 6 weeks or more. That is what I would say is a true weight stall. Like if it's just been like 6 days and you haven't seen any weight loss, just give your body some time to kind of catch up with the new metabolic processes, the new metabolic machinery, that sort of thing, adjusting to a new schedule. Give yourself some time with that. But if it's been more than 6 weeks, then it's like, okay, now I need to change something. So if you've down 25 pounds, you're stuck, that approach isn't working for you anymore, right? We gotta reassess and try something different. So the first thing I want you to do is look at, where are you at now? And this is why it's so hard for me to just put out, like a diet or a plan, a meal plan, or even, a 10 bullet points of what every single person has to do in order to turn their metabolic disease around or turn their weight gain into weight loss. Because everybody's at a different starting point. We're all different metabolically. I am very different metabolically than I was even 5 years ago. 5 years ago, I was dealing with pretty severe insulin resistance. Now I've reversed that. I'm metabolically flexible, and I've brought my insulin level, my fasting insulin was likely in the 20s. I don't know for sure because I didn't test until 2 years into this process, but down to 2.2 was my latest fasting insulin, which, by the way, I like to see between 2 and 6. So where are you at? Where are you at nutritionally? So a lot of people want to know, like, well, how many carbs can I eat? How much of this? How much protein do I have to take in? You need to assess where you're at right now nutritionally. So I like to kind of look at it as a spectrum of, we'll say 1 to 10. 1 being the standard American diet, full of processed foods. You're eating all the time. You're eating tons of sugar, eating from the time you get up until the time you go to bed, like really just a metabolic mess, and having to burn carbohydrates and sugar all the time. To 10 being a person who's really got their nutrition locked in. They are eating whole natural foods. They are eating seasonal organic foods. Again, this is 10. This is on a spectrum. I wouldn't even say I'm a 10. I would say I'm between an 8 and a 9, because I'm not like 100% like seasonal organic. I'm very close, but I'm not a 10. But 10 would be like, you really have your nutrition locked in. It'd be really hard to tweak your nutrition at this point. You eat seasonal, organic, all whole foods. You're not eating out. You're not eating seed oils. You're not eating sugar, that kind of thing. And I know very few people who are 10 and can maintain that. So I'm not saying that that is your goal, but I'm just saying we need to look at where you are at nutritionally so we can move along that spectrum. And so even for people like me who are maybe 8 or 9, and really close to that 10, if I still have 5 pounds to lose, maybe I want to move from 8 to 9 to a 10 for maybe a month and see if that gets me to where I'm going to, see that 5 pounds of weight loss. If you're somebody who is a 1 or a 2, like you're eating out most of the time, you're eating mostly restaurant foods, ultra processed foods, just moving along that spectrum can start to move the needle when it comes to weight loss. And we're going to talk about many more things than nutrition. I'm just kind of starting with nutrition. But as we know, if we've listened to my more recent podcasts, nutrition isn't everything, but it plays a huge role with weight loss and, whether or not you're going to see that. And of course, we need to look at how much food we're taking in. I have talked extensively about how hormones are all powerful when it comes to our nutrition and caloric intake and what we're eating, because the hormones are going to direct the food where it needs to go. Is there enough energy storage? Is there too much energy storage where it's going to convert to fat? But you do need to have control over the amount of food. It does matter. I'm not saying it's the end all be all, but it does matter if you're eating way more than what your body needs and there's nowhere to store the extra, your body is going to convert that extra energy to fat. And then it also makes it really tough to burn through glycogen and stored carbohydrates. And your body is going to burn those first before it goes looking for stored body fat. So just be mindful of the overall, how much you're taking in, because it does matter. And so when we look at nutrition, there's a couple of things that we can kind of pull as levers, right? So if you're somebody who is taking in 300 to 400 grams of carbohydrate a day, which is standard, you can use that carbohydrate as a lever to pull. Okay. So if you're doing 300 to 400 grams of carbohydrate, just as I said, you likely, unless you're super, super active and burning that off, every day, all day. I don't know many people who are exercising that much, but if you are, and you can handle that amount of carbohydrate, more power to you. But a lot of us, we're just not, we're more sedentary than that. So that amount of carbohydrate is going to fill up our glycogen stores in our muscle, in our liver. And then after that, your body only has a finite amount of carbohydrate storage. It's got to convert it to fat, right? It's not going to just disappear and do nothing. If it's not burned off, it's going to convert it to fat. And then the fat is either going to be stored in the organs or the adipose tissue, kind of depending on where you are metabolically and metabolic health wise. So definitely carbohydrates is a lever you can pull. If you're at that 300 to 400 mark, start to scale back. And I would say I'm a liberal low carb is where I sit. sit around 100 grams, probably anywhere from 75 to 125 grams of carbohydrate a day is what I take in. That's a more liberal low carb approach, but it works for me. I exercise about an hour a day, and then I try to walk, as much as I can throughout the day, but that works for me for maintenance. I'm not looking to lose weight, but for you, if that is a lever that you can pull, I would suggest if you're high carb, try to scale it back by about 100 grams per week until you get down to the 50 to 75 range of carbohydrates. What that will do is push your body into more of a fat burning zone. So that's a lever that you can pull, the carbohydrates, and doesn't have to be forever, but as you're looking to lose weight, that's going to help your body to burn fat. Now, on the flip side of that, you don't want to eat too much fat either. If you are low carb, you want to prioritize protein, eat some fat, but if you're eating excessive, copious amounts of fat, and this is where people can get into trouble following a ketogenic approach, then again, if you're not burning off all the fat, it's got to go somewhere. And so that extra fat is going to be converted and stored in the adipose tissues around the organs, what have you. So you do need to be mindful and careful about how much fat you're taking in. And that's why people who eat high carb, high fat, well, they're both two big energy sources. That's where if we're not really, really, really active, you're going to have a lot of trouble with losing any kind of weight because you have two big energy substrates coming in. So if you're lowering carbs, up your fat so that you can start burning fat for energy, but not so much that, you're then body's like, what the heck, all this fat, what am I going to do with it? And then it stores it. So then again, prioritize protein. But if you're somewhere, if you're like me, where you're like liberal low carb, and you're eating like maybe 75 to 100 or 125 grams of carb, which is great if you're in maintenance and that really works for you. But if you're looking to lose weight, especially if you're looking to lose that last 5 pounds or so, scaling back and doing 50 grams of carb or less and just taking that sugar out, that can be helpful just to see if it pushes you into fat burning mode, into the ketogenic range, and even maybe trying under 30 grams. This does not have to be forever, just for a few weeks to see if you can move the needle with that weight loss. You can try that too. The other thing to think about is to build muscle, right? Because muscle is more metabolically active. And so if you can work on building muscle, that's going to stimulate weight loss. If you don't change anything else, you can't like start eating a lot more, in replacement of that. But building muscle, doing strength training, see if that, and sometimes you may see not a whole lot of change in weight, but you will see changes in body composition with that. And of course, we can pull the fasting lever, right? We've talked extensively. This podcast used to be called Fast to Heal. There are so many podcast episodes on the different types of fasting, how long to fast, who should do it, when therapeutic fasting versus intermittent fasting versus time restricted eating. It's all back in podcast episodes. But fasting is definitely a lever that you can pull if you have good thyroid health, you have good, cortisol levels. But for most women, especially if you are in perimenopause or, still menstruating, doing a circadian fast can be more helpful, meaning we do more food during the day and afternoon and then fast through dinner. If you want to try some intermittent fasting, do that 2-3 times a week and see if that is helpful for you. Now, if you are kind of just new to this whole thing and you have, very healthy cortisol issues, and you don't have any thyroid issues, I don't want you to get cortisol and thyroid issues, but you could vary that. You could, fast through breakfast a couple of times a week and then fast through dinner a couple of times a week. But like I said, the female hormones, what I've learned in the last months to a year is that they're pretty delicate. And so fasting through dinner works a whole lot better for most women. So you could try a circadian approach of fasting if you haven't done that already, because sometimes that weight loss resistance is all just hooked into leptin resistance and your body not having safety signals. And so, when you're doing too much fasting or you're fasting through breakfast all the time, it's fine to do it here and there, but doing it every day can be problematic. Then your body's not getting that safety signal. It's not resetting leptin appropriately. Leptin is basically a hormone produced in the fat cells that tells your brain and your body like how much storage you have on your body. So how much extra storage is there and how much energy does it have to burn? So if you have 50 extra pounds to lose, your body should know that, right? It should know like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to tell Shannon that she doesn't have to eat as much. She doesn't have to be as hungry because she's got 50 pounds of extra body fat here to burn. That is kind of what leptin does. It signals to the body how much storage you have in the tank, right? How much extra adipose is there. If leptin is not signaling correctly, and a lot of times this has to do with insulin resistance and it has to do with safety signals, you can be in trouble, and you can try so many things and you're just not going to move the needle. So some things to do to help with leptin resistance. I have a special expert, a guest expert coming on in just a few weeks, Sarah Kleiner. She'll be coming on in the end, just in I think it's 2 to 3 episodes that she's coming on. And we talk all about leptin resistance, but resetting the safety signals, eating breakfast, eating a high protein, low carb breakfast, telling your body that it's safe, working on the nervous system and bringing the insulin resistance down, not eating at night, not snacking, not eating processed foods. And then the circadian rhythm, the lighting piece plays a huge role with leptin because it's a circadian hormone as well, and so is melatonin, and so is cortisol. So I know that these are kind of like, I'm just going a little bit into a lot of huge topics, but fasting is definitely a lever that you can pull. But I would encourage you, if you're menstruating or in perimenopause, try to fast through dinner and see how you do. I know I feel really great and I sleep really well. A lot of times, I'll eat at like 8 and 2, or, it kind of depends on what time of the year. Or I'll eat at like 7 and 1, and just fast for the rest of the day. And I always try to do it when there's activities going on at night, so I'm not thinking about food and dinner. So you can try that a couple times a week and see how you do. That's definitely another lever to pull. So we have the carb lever, the fat lever, the fasting lever so far, and the building muscle. And then if you feel like your nutrition and exercise have been dialed in for years, and you're like, Shanna, yeah, did all that. I've done the keto, I've done carnivore, I'm like strength train like you won't believe. I've always been really active, and I still have those 5 to 7 pounds to lose. Then it's time to look at circadian health, lighting, red light therapy, your easy water or your exclusion zone water, which I haven't talked a lot about on the podcast, but your body makes its own water, which, we a lot of times think we just have to drink a lot of water to be hydrated, but your body actually makes exclusion zone water, mainly with infrared, by being outside in the sunlight. And there's just a lot that come into play, because remember, if we go back to the start of the episode, weight loss is multifactorial, and it's always linking back to some sort of inflammation, some sort of hormonal imbalance, something that's just not right in the body, something's not balanced out. And so we have to look at our circadian function, our cortisol and melatonin hormones balance. Is cortisol coming up in the morning and midday, and then retreating in the late afternoon and evening hours when it's supposed to be going down? Is your melatonin production able to come up in the evening so you can get a restful night's sleep and you can go into rest and digest mode when you're supposed to? Are you blocking blue light at night after sunset? Because blue light stimulates cortisol. And I've done many podcast episodes on this, where excessive cortisol production increases blood sugar, increases insulin. And then we, perpetuate the whole insulin resistance problem. And I will say, after I really keyed into the circadian health and the lighting piece, my insulin was hanging out around 7 to 7.5 for about a year and a half, which isn't, it's just a little bit higher than I expected it to be. I like to see between 2 and 6. I did the circadian stuff, and then my latest marker was 2.2. So it just goes to tell, like, the cortisol melatonin relationship is huge when it comes to insulin resistance as well. So getting those hormones, those master circadian hormones, where they should be is very, you have to have those reined in to be successful with truly reversing insulin resistance. And so keying in on the circadian health, watching the sunrise every morning to have a healthy cortisol response, trying to get out into the morning sunlight as much as possible, making that your first light of the day, even if you're not watching the sunrise. Here in Wisconsin, the sun was coming up between 5 and 5:30 for a couple of months, and it was hard for me to be out there every single day to watch the sunrise. But I always made my first light morning sunlight. I was right from my bedroom out to the morning sunlight for at least a couple of minutes. And then after, I've talked about the circadian app before, but you can download that to see when all these light frequencies are happening in your area. But the UVA rise is super important, because that stimulates serotonin and dopamine. That comes an hour, 1 to 3 hours after sunrise. In that time, if you can be out during that time, that'll stimulate those hormones so that you can have a healthy circadian rhythm. And the serotonin is later converted, that's your feel good hormone. I mean, and you can try this, in the morning, you can go outside for 10, 15 minutes and walk during that UVA rise, and you immediately feel better. And then that serotonin is later converted to melatonin, which is this, helps you sleep. It's our master antioxidant. It helps you to heal. And so that's where we need to lock in our sleep and our sleep hygiene and getting restful sleep, sleeping through the night. I should have started with this, honestly, with the podcast, but if you don't have healthy sleep and you're not healing, it's going to be really hard to lose weight. So that needs to be locked in first. And a lot of that has to do with circadian health and your lighting environment. That's so key with foundational sleep and getting restorative sleep. So again, if you work with me in semi-courses, I can help you determine, do you have cortisol and melatonin issues? You can definitely get tested for that. You don't have to. A lot of times, a lot of people do have imbalances with that. I had it myself. But you can get the cortisol and melatonin patterns, resolved where they should be optimized within a couple of months. So that is very important when it comes to weight loss, especially if you feel like, yeah, I'm just spinning my wheels. I've had my nutrition optimized, my exercise optimized. I don't know what else to do. Look at your lighting, look at your circadian rhythm, and give that a couple of months, to really take effect. And like I said, that's going to lock in that leptin hormone so that you can overcome leptin resistance. And then your body's going to start to recognize how much fat you have or how much energy is stored on the body. And so when leptin is working well, then your body gets the signals. Oh, okay. Like tomorrow I don't have to, stimulate appetite so much because I have this extra fat to burn. So taking light breaks throughout the day is very helpful, going outside whenever you can, and then blocking that blue light at nighttime to just, make sure that melatonin production is being stimulated and you're preserving your good sleep hygiene. And then sometimes people need to block blue light during the day. Also, if they're overstimulated, they're on computers a lot for work, you're under a lot of artificial lightning. The artificial lightning is coming from above. That's very stimulating for the nervous system, very stimulating for cortisol. And, all day long, you can be in kind of this parasympathetic mode, the fight or flight. It's just, it's not a good place to be for your nervous system to be overactive. So look at that. It's really easy to mitigate. You can wear some yellow toned blue blocking glasses during the day if you have to be on computers a lot, and then take light breaks whenever you can. Eat your lunch outside if you can. Go outside at least for 5 minutes during lunch. Take your breaks outside. Whatever it is that you can do for your body to be told the correct time and to reset that. And then mitigating that blue light and the flicker. Sometimes the flicker in the computers and the overhead lights, the fluorescent lights, can be very, very stimulating for the nervous system as well. And that is just, producing inflammation in the body and an inflammatory response. So just wearing the blue light blocking glasses during the day. I have lots of codes in my product recommendations for all different types of glasses, from, very affordable to more expensive. So you can check those out in the show notes. But look at that as culprit if you haven't been able to lose weight and you've done all of the other things. And then, if you really, have the very, very stubborn weight that's just not moving anywhere, like I said, work on those safety signals, work on building muscle, work on starting to eat breakfast within 30 to 60 minutes of sunrise, work on prioritizing protein throughout the day. Pull the carb levers if you need to. Start by maybe going under 100 grams of carbohydrate if you're eating a high carb diet. You don't want to go too low, too fast. And then once you get used to about around 100 grams of carbohydrate, pull back to under 50. Watch how much fat you're taking in. Another part that I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail is the nervous system and not being able to relax. I alluded to that a few minutes ago. But I am bringing an expert on about that as well, but just not, being anxious. And the best thing you can do for the nervous system is, is helping with the lighting environment and optimizing that, but also getting outside in nature whenever possible, listening to nature, watching nature, being in nature, and getting your feet grounded into nature as much as possible, or just touching trees if you can't, take your shoes off or whatever it is. Grounding is very helpful to bring down inflammation right away in the body. And I see this all the time on my daytime stress. Anytime I'm like working outside and I have my feet on the ground, I will see my stress start to plummet. It doesn't even matter if I'm like working on something a little bit stressful, it'll bring it down, as opposed to when I'm working in my office on Wi-Fi. It's just a totally different. So you might need some breath support, nervous system support. And then looking at the non-native EMF, I haven't had really too many experts on about this. We just kind of scratched the surface on this, but non-native EMF, like Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, those sorts of things, that can be, it's very, very different from person to person. Some people are super sensitive to it, and some people, bodies can get away with more of that. But that is another thing to look at. If again, you're like, I don't know, I've done everything with my diet, I've done the exercise, look at your non-native EMF exposure. Are you like listening to AirPods? Are you hooked up to Bluetooth, earphones, whatever you want to call them? Are you, in your car and Bluetooth, like driving an hour to and from work? I can't say that I'm exposed to it myself, but I've learned about how to mitigate it, rolling down your window while you're driving, going outside and getting grounded as much as possible. Turning off Bluetooth on your devices. I wear my Oura Ring, but I always have it on Bluetooth mode now. Getting out of Bluetooth as much as possible, and Wi-Fi, that'll help with that non-native EMF mitigation. And then looking at, again, this is kind of like on the spectrum. This is like, things that you might not have thought about, but eating your meals outside to help your blood sugar response. So we brought Kelsey Dexter on a couple of weeks ago, and she talked about a study how shining red light on skin while you're eating reduced our blood sugar by 27% at that meal. So that is very substantial. So eating your meals outside, if it's possible, in the sunlight, you can be in the shade, maybe just stick your legs in the sun or something like that if you can't be in full sun. But eating your meals outside, or if you have a red light panel and you can't get outside, that can work too. But that can be another way to just, give it a try. And again, I want to reiterate, this is not from any kind of study. These are just things that I have seen over my years as a practitioner. So the only other things I want to mention that come back to hormones, right? I talk a lot about insulin resistance. I'm getting more into leptin resistance and treating that as a root cause, and the melatonin and the cortisol issues. But another couple of things to think about are thyroid health, because if you have a sluggish thyroid, it's going to be very, very difficult to lose weight. But I treat thyroid issues like I treat all of the things that we've talked about with the metabolic stuff, the circadian, the lighting, all of it. I treat the thyroid issues the same way, but I just want you to be mindful. It could be your thyroid, or it could be female sex hormones that are declining, and the body's just growing more insulin resistant. And you might see some weight gain with that. And that can be challenging as well. But those are the main things to think about and to look at, and some things that you can look at trying if you are still trying to lose weight. And like I said, it's not that different trying to lose 5 pounds versus trying to lose 50 pounds. Usually it's just a matter of changing something up, tweaking something where you're gonna see that happen. But again, it's mostly the pace. Somebody who has a whole lot of weight to lose, it's usually gonna come off faster for a while than somebody who just has a couple of pounds to lose, because your body has to feel safe to let that body fat go, and it has to know that it can let the body fat go, that it has extra. And it also has hormonally, Your hormones need to be balanced out in order to burn that body fat. So hope this episode's help. We'll see you back next week.